Welcome, everyone, to the Flower Files podcast sponsored by Wildly Native Flower Farm. Here, everyone is welcome to talk with fellow flower lovers, including real perspectives from the farm, the flowers, and me, the florist.
From the messy day-to-day operations down to the details and even business perspectives, this podcast has a little bit of everything to keep it real. We know that life can get crazy and we don't always have the time to spend on what we love, so we are here to help you take a little time to indulge in nature. I'm Liza Getz.
I'm Lizzie Frey, and we are the team that makes this podcast. Every once in a while, we have a couple guests, this business thing, and what we are working with is called life.
Join us as we walk you through how to think outside the box, talk from the farmer's perspective, have honest conversations about florals, and how to run, well, life. So listen in.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, in the podcast section, and any of your other podcast platforms. You can also find us online at wildlynativeflowerfarm.com, and in an easy way, you can look in the show notes, and all of the information will be right there for easy access for you guys.
Well, hello there, friends. Welcome back to the Flower Files. I'm really glad you're here with me today because this episode is a little different. It's not about farming and tractors, logistics and numbers, wedding florals and customers, or even business strategy. Today, I want to talk about something deeply personal, something that I think every flower gardener or flower lover has felt. What the garden teaches us about our own mental health. So the theme is what the garden taught me, and trust me, the lessons go far beyond soil and seeds. So one of the first lessons the garden ever taught me is the art of slowing down. We live in such a fast-paced world. Notifications dinging, deadlines piling up, everyone expecting you to answer in seconds. But when I walk out to the garden, all of that seems to go quiet. Plants don't rush. They take the time they need. I remember one morning specifically when I was looking at putting together this podcast that I wanted to talk about. And I was rushing to get bouquets out the door, and I walked past a row of our zinnias. I had been out in the field, I had picked everything, had brought it up to the barn, was trying to get everything done. And there were these zinnias, and the sunlight had hit them just right. And they were glowing in that sunrise. But my brain was stuck in the go mode. Like, you got to get it done. You got to be here on time. You have to hurry. You have to get these things finished. Da, 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 da. I don't know how to spell that, by the way. But something on that day made me stop just for a moment. And I realized those flowers, they weren't in a hurry. They were just being. And in that stillness, I felt myself pause, and I felt myself breathe a little differently. And I feel like it's almost a medicine from the garden. It slows you down, but it doesn't punish you. Instead, it almost gives you permission. So I want you to think about a time where you slowed down in your own garden. Just take a moment. Maybe it's with a houseplant. And how did you feel different in that moment? Did you notice your shoulders maybe dropped and your breathing changed? Maybe it deepened a little? For me, slowing down isn't easy. It's not easy at all. I'm such a doer. I like lists and I like action. And sometimes I actually write things on the list when I've completed them just so I can cross them off because it makes me feel better. Please tell me there are other people out there that do this too. But I feel like the garden keeps teaching me that being present is enough. And I think anyone who has spent time with their hands in the dirt, on their knees, it's a different connection because the garden us teaches us things we didn't even know we needed to learn. And it's that moment where the garden whispers, wait, because the seeds don't rush And the tulips don't hurry. And even, believe it or not, even the weeds take their time to make their way to the light. And that lesson alone has been huge for my own mental health. Instead of spiraling into stress or trying to control everything, I've learned to trust that things unfold in their own time. And that's okay. Another lesson that the garden has literally hammered into me, sometimes gently and sometimes not, is that growth isn't linear. So, thinking about those zinnias that I had talked about, we tie up our zinnias. And there are many times where we go to cut something and we pull that stem out and the growth isn't straight. It may not be linear. It may have twisted around that twine that we use to tie things up. It may have bent a little bit differently, but it still figured it out. It still figured out the way to go and get there and be complete. I feel like we often think that if we do all of the right things, plan at the right time, water correctly, fertilize, check the cycle of the moon, look at all of the different things, that everything's going to work out. But that's not actually how it goes. Sometimes the entire bed fails. I've had asters that are literally 3 inches tall. Don't know what I did wrong at that moment, but I was able to figure it out and learn from that. Because sometimes something surprises you and it thrives when you least expect it. And I think that's similar to mental health. Healing, growth, changes, they're never straight lines. There's days where you don't even realize you need help, and there's days where you stand back, look around you, and go, I'm not okay. There's good days, there's hard days, there's setbacks, and then there's little teeny tiny victories that just keep you going. You may find little signs and little moments where you're like, you know what? I am in the right place doing the right things. There may be times in your life where things you thought were going to be a specific way and you ended up twisted on a different path. Very, very similar to the garden. And this lesson helps me remember that my own personal bad sessions or seasons don't define me. They're just part of my cycle. And that rest, just like dormancy in plants, is still progress. It's still moving forward. So if you've ever been feeling stuck, maybe ask yourself, are you really stuck? Or are you just in a dormancy season? Is it just a space where you have to pop out of your seed coat in order to grow? So science backs this up. Not that we all have seed coats, but it backs up that time in the garden reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and can ease symptoms of anxiety and depression. But beyond the science, there's just something about it to me that feels like therapy. When I'm overwhelmed, when I have too much going on, when there's too much white noise or static, I can walk out into the rows, pull a few weeds, deadhead a little bit, and it becomes almost meditative for me. Sometimes I plug in a podcast. Sometimes I plug in music. Sometimes I plug in and I have nothing playing and nobody knows the difference. But sometimes I just need that quiet and I need to come inside myself because it's the act of tending to something outside of myself that pulls me out of my own head. And sometimes that's what we need most to stop obsessing about ourselves and instead nurture something else. Because the garden listens without judgment. The flowers don't care if I had a bad day. The snapdragons are already out there snapping, so they don't care if I snapped at someone I love, or if I feel like I'm not enough. They still bloom. And being around that kind of unconditional healing to me is just beautiful. And I think another lesson, if I'm thinking about what the garden has taught me, is resilience. Because the garden is full of those curveballs. Storms come, pests pop up out of nowhere, unexpected frosts happen, wind, the crazy fox that runs through, breaks the gate. Things happen. Little stuff happens. And early on, I used to take it so personally. I thought everything was out to get me. Like, what did I do wrong? What did I do to deserve this? But nature reminds us that some things are just outside of our own control. Sometimes you can't control it because sometimes resilience looks like bouncing back. But sometimes resilience is actually about letting go. Pulling up that plant that isn't going to make it is the same as us admitting that something isn't working so you can make room for something new. And honestly, that lesson translates so much into mental health because sometimes we cling to habits or relationships or even old versions of ourselves or perspectives that just aren't serving us. And that garden shows us it's okay to let go. It's part of the cycle of making space for what's next. So think about a moment where you had to let go of something in your own life, maybe in your own garden. And did it make room for something better? Because sometimes that storm comes through and it flattens your best blooms. And sometimes pests take out a whole crop overnight. And sometimes, no matter how carefully you planned, things just don't work out. Sound familiar? Because that's life. And as much as it hurts, the garden reminds us that loss and failure are part of growth. And you can't control every outcome, but you can plant again. You can start fresh, and that resilience transfers back into life outside the garden too. Okay, so not to sound all woo woo, because I know there's definitely people out there who plant potatoes and crops based on the moon cycle. Some people plant them at night based on the moon cycle. I personally have never done that. I've always been intrigued by it, but usually I'm running around trying to make sure deadlines are met and everything is so on schedule that I don't always pay attention to that. And maybe I should. But one of the things that I do find is that the garden has given me grounding. Grounding is this practice of connecting back to the earth, to your body, and to the present moment. And where better to do that than in an actual garden? Because there's something powerful about taking your shoes off and feeling the soil under your feet, or kneeling down and letting your hands sink into that soil. The textures, the smells, even the sounds around you, the birds, the bees, the leaves, the wind, they pull you right into now. So when I feel scattered or anxious or like my mind is running a mile a minute, I'll pause and literally ground myself. Sometimes it's just standing barefoot in the grass while the dogs are outside running around like crackheads. Other times, I'll grab a handful of soil and really notice it. Really, really look at it. Really, really take a moment because it reminds me I'm here, I'm safe, and I'm connected. And I think we forget that. I think we're so often caught up in our screens, in our schedules, and the stress that comes with that, that we lose touch with the actual earth beneath us. The garden gives us a chance to plug back into something steady and real. So, the last little bit I want to share with you guys today, because I know this is a lot and I know it's heavy and I know there's so many pieces to this and there's so many spirals from this. But the big lesson that I want to share about today with you with this is joy. That tiny, fleeting kind that the garden seems to overflow with. That first moment of that first bloom, of that first crop. That first moment of spring with that first petal that unfurls, that first thing that you pick from the garden. Your first garden harvest is usually one tomato or one cucamelon or one fantastic cantaloupe or that first handful of beans. It's joy. It's joy. It's the single bud breaking open, the first bee of spring, the smell of basil when you brush against it. These aren't big, huge, grand moments, but they're grounding. They remind us that joy doesn't always come from those great, big, huge achievements. It comes in noticing the small, tiny, beautiful things that are always right here. I have seen on social media a couple times where it's the beginning of the garden season and it's close to those first harvests. And people have these great big gathering baskets and they start sharing pictures of that one tomato, one green bean, like one little teeny tiny thing that they have picked. But to me, that huge basket filled with those one or two items is just overflowing with joy. Just completely overflowing with joy. And don't get me started on the first time, if you have chickens, your chicken lays an egg, or the first time your chickens have their own chicks. There is such a moment of joy in those moments. You can't describe it. There's no words, there's no sound. It just bubbles up inside you. And I think mental health thrives on these little sparks. It wasn't until I was much older and my kids were much older that I understood the phrase, don't count the days, make the days count. Make the little moments count, because in the blur of life, everything gets so much faster and the kids are involved in all of these things. But you have to take moments and find those little joys because they go so fast, so fast. So I think mental health thrives on these little sparks. The garden is constantly teaching me to look for them. Find that cool bumblebee. Wow over the incredible collection of butterflies and moths. Wow over the perfect petals. Wonder over how the dahlias have a harlequin style half and half or new striping. Or how certain plants are so resilient that they drop seeds and come back every year, even when they're not supposed to. So I'd love to hear what your guys' little tiny little garden moment was that made you smile even on a tough day. And thinking about that, I think the garden also connects us with other people. Because when I share a bouquet with a neighbor, when I take flowers to someone who's not expecting it, when I take weekly deliveries to all the businesses that we go to each week, they're happy. If they're excited to see us, we bring them joy. And I think that is so important. And when I teach someone how to grow their own flowers, or they ask me a question and I'm able to help them, no, try this. This is why that's not working. When I see a customer's face light up when I'm doing a delivery, when they come to the farmer's market, when I ask them, hey, how did that salt or sugar thing go? That that new recipe that you tried, how did that work? What happened? And they can tell me about it. It reminds us that we're not meant to do this thing called life alone. Flowers are that universal language of love and care. And sometimes the best way to boost your own mental health is to brighten someone else's day. So here is what the garden has taught me: that patience brings peace, that growth and life is messy and nonlinear, that resilience is sometimes holding on, but oftentimes it's just letting go, and that joy is everywhere if you just pay attention. But maybe the biggest lesson is this: tending a garden is also tending yourself. Every time we dig, water, prune, harvest, weed, any of those things, we're not just caring for plants, we're nurturing inside of us as well. So I would love to hear your garden lessons. What has your garden taught you? Share with me. The typical Instagram, TikTok, any of those things, but an email or a personal message would be great too, because I really would love to hear what your gardens mean to you. And if you're okay with it, I may even share some of these on a future episode. So if you're listening and you're wondering how the garden may help you with your own mental health, here are a few small ways to start. You can plant one thing. Just pick one thing. Even a pot of basil on your windowsill totally counts. You can make it sensory. Notice the colors, the textures, the scents. Let yourself be fully present and just take a moment. You can also create a ritual. Water your plants at the same time each day and let that become a grounding habit. You can also give them away. Share cuttings, herbs, or a single flower stem even with a friend, because that connection is like medicine too. So thanks for spending time with me today on the Flower Files. I hope you enjoyed this episode because it was really very personal and so out of the box. Maybe if this speaks to you and you have a friend who could use a pick-me-up or a smile or something, you could give them some flowers and maybe share this episode with them. I don't know. I'm never good at this, like share and do all of that kind of stuff, but it helps more flower lovers find us. So what has the garden taught me? Patience and resilience, the beauty of small moments, as you know. Growth isn't linear, and it's always possible, and to step outside your comfort zone. If you've been struggling, I hope this inspires you to step outside, dig in the dirt, or pause to notice a flower, because it's your garden, no matter how big or small, can be a safe space for your soul. So thanks for spending time with me on the Flower Files, and I definitely look towards to talking to you again soon. May your mind be as nourished as your soil, and may your flowers remind you of the beauty in every season, so you keep growing both the flowers and yourself.